Welcome to VW Healthcare World, Sandeep. And for everyone else, this is another episode of Thursday Thought Leaders. Our guest today is Sandeep Verma, who's the country head for Buyers Consumer Health Division in India. Apart from the large experience that he has, he's been involved in the health and hygiene categories in FMCG for the past 10 years. And he has also launched many consumer initiatives on this front globally with various popular brands. And so thank you, Sandeep, for taking our time to speak with us on Thursday Thought Leaders for Business World.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Sandeep, my first question to you before I break into a conversation is trying to understand uh, what has been your journey in the consumer space related to health, and what do you see has changed uh, in the past few years?
So, firstly, thanks for having me on the show, Harbinder, and it's great to great to be here and talk about something which I'm quite passionate about. So, my overall FMCG journey is almost 20 years long, and 22 years long actually. My health and hygiene journey, you can say, started in 2008 when I started. So, I was in Unilever prior to joining Bayer. And 2008, I started working on this on the healthcare brand called Lifebuoy, essentially, and that's literally the start of my journey in the healthcare and or health and hygiene segment. And I think one of the things which attracted me then and still keeps me attracted to the healthcare segment till date is how relevant this segment is for India, how relevant this is for any other emerging economy like India, and how supposedly easy it is to make a difference in this segment through very small change in habits and through very small acts that all of us can do in our everyday life, which can make a very big difference. So I think what has changed now, coming to your question, what has changed over the last 14-15 years that I have been in the health and hygiene segment is obviously there has been a massive awareness now of preventive health, of self care, and whether so I started my journey in hand hygiene segment, where we were essentially educating the consumers about the need to wash hands with soap, before every single meal and before every single meal and each time you take a bathroom break. So something as small as that, which seemingly seems very small, but in a country like India, it could make a big difference. And we saw that it made a huge difference in the area of hand hygiene. And then we moved over to how, just practicing the right hand hygiene can actually help a child in India reach the age of 5. So the whole campaign on helping a child reach the age of 5, because as you know, child mortality is quite high in India, and especially in the age group of 0 to 5. And again, very small changes in habits and very small degree of knowledge and awareness can make huge difference. So started from there. I think now, of course, because of the work that has been done by all the agencies, by the private sector, by the government sector, by the government itself, there is a lot more awareness on these things. And of course, the advent of internet and the advent of social media has ensured that there is a lot of distribution of good practices and good habits and the right kind of knowledge, which happens very fast, which spreads very fast. When I started my journey at that time, it was a little difficult to take this information and take this knowledge, especially in the semi-urban and the rural parts of India. But now it's the reverse, because with the advent of mobile telephony and with the advent of mobile phones per se, mobile penetration in India, it's now as easy to disseminate information into the rural parts of India as it is in the urban parts of India. So that's the other big change which we've seen. So I think firstly, the level of awareness has increased significantly from what it used to be. Secondly, the spread of information now can happen a lot faster per se. And I think the third thing, which fortunately, unfortunately, is like a big event, was COVID itself, where post-COVID people became a lot more aware of the need for self-care and not a lot more aware of the need for preventive healthcare to take care of themselves and of their family itself. So I think these are the three or four things which I think have changed in the course of the last decade.
Right. I think Sandeep, apart from the information, and when the company grows, there are a lot of companies doing a lot of stuff around this space. But one thing that clearly emerges from your conversation is the purpose with which you are working towards this. So it's a great insight. And since we are talking of post-COVID, the impact on acceptance of this information that always existed, but people
Mhm.
were ignorant in terms of accepting it. When we speak of preventive healthcare, and also the challenge around the self care in India, how do you think we have progressed in the past few years, especially pre and post pandemic? Is all only positive, or are there challenges that we have seen emerge out of this?
So there are, like with everything else, there are both positives and challenges which still remain. I don't think there are any negatives, but there are challenges which still remain. So see, the big difficulty, or the biggest challenge on espousing the cause of preventive healthcare is that preventive healthcare, by its simple definition, you hopefully should not see any tangible benefits out of it, or any tangible results of practicing. The whole, absence of illness, or the absence of any particular major ailment in you is basically the success of preventive healthcare, the way, it's sort of defined in India, or the way the consumers understand it. I think what happened during COVID was a big tangible, I would say, impact of not practicing some of the self-care routine, or some of the right practices, was very starkly aware, or became, all of us, including you and me, became very starkly aware of that during the COVID period. So, for example, the term immunity, okay, came into existence, or came into the common man's parlance in India only post COVID. And I remember doing, meeting the consumers just before COVID. I joined, Bear just before COVID, like 2 months before COVID. And then I remember going to the consumers' houses, and I'm talking about, houses I mean, people living in the metros, who were significantly high penetration of internet, etc. And I was asking them the meaning of immunity, or the importance of immunity, and what does it mean for them. And most of the people had not heard of the word. I mean, they were not aware of what does immunity mean. So at that point in time, also, the simple absence of illness meant health for the Indians in general. And I think that has what has changed, maybe post COVID, where the whole proactivity has come in. So people want to be proactive participants in their own healthcare system, and that is the whole. I think that's the genesis, or that's the framework on which self care starts. I mean, that's the framework of self. If you are just a recipient, okay, then you are not really practicing self care. You have to be a proactive participant in taking care of yourself and your families, to be a participant in self care. That, I think, has happened a lot post COVID, because people became aware of a lot of new things, etc. So that has happened. The challenges which still remain are that a lot of the habits, a lot of the good habits which people had adopted during COVID and just after COVID, a lot of those practices are slipping away again. So and I don't need to tell you what I mean, but that is what I see as the current big challenge, that a lot of the good practices that people had adopted, whether it was eating the right kind of diet, whether it was doing the right kind of exercise, whether it was taking the right kind of supplements to ensure that your micronutrient deficiencies are met. A lot of those habits which had come into place during COVID or around the COVID times, we see that a lot of people have now given up and sort of going back to the pre-COVID practices, etc. So I see that as some of the challenge. I think some of the other challenges are more around the area of, while there is internet and there is Google, all of that is there. I think the big challenge on information right now still exists. There is a lot of data which is there on Google, but whether that data is giving you the right kind of awareness, and whether that can lead to responsible self-care, is still a big question mark. So I think the reason why a lot of people in India still not practicing self-care, or or into preventive health is because there is a big gap between information, awareness, and action. So you are sometimes not getting the right kind of information which can lead to the right kind of awareness, or if you're getting the right kind of knowledge, it's not leading to final action. So that gap is still not. I mean, it's still there, and I think we still need, we as companies, as healthcare companies, need to work more about towards bridging this gap between information, awareness, leading to action itself. So that's, I would say, that is the second biggest challenge. So these are the two big challenges, that we shouldn't give up on the good practices that we are taking, that we are adopted. And secondly is the whole area around this gap, filling up this gap, which still exists and needs to be bridged.
Yeah. Sandeep, very valid points. But, I also feel that when, we were speaking about Google, and what information Google throws up is what exists on the internet. And it's not always that we have the right information that is existing on the internet. In fact, my purpose-driven journey in healthcare is stemmed out of this fact, because when I used to work at Google, this is when I realized that we may be doing more harm than good in healthcare space. But this also brings a point specifically to India. And the reason I want to ask you, since you're managing the category which is non-prescription drugs or OTC, in India, I find that self-care is also leading to self-medication. And the information could be coming from your parents or the older generation who have the old dated information, or we find people going to a pharmacy and asking the pharmacist as to what medication should he be taking. Now, related to that, what do you think is the is something that private sector needs to do, and what could be the role of the government around this to curb this kind of I would say wrong information, misinformation, or taking the care in your own hands?
No, I think I firstly completely agree with you. I think, and that's why when we talk about self-care, we talk about responsible self-care. And like I mentioned, the one of the big challenge which exists because of the existence of internet, and I won't entirely blame Google for it, but like internet per se and social media, I would say, is that everybody feels that, or a lot of people feel that they're doctors, or they've become doctors, or they have information in their hands, and now they know everything that there needs to be. And all of us remember the various videos that were being circulated around the COVID time about how you should drink this to prevent COVID, you should eat this to prevent COVID, you should do this with your food and vegetables and etc. To prevent COVID. And also all kinds of information overload is there. I think I would say, aside of the information which comes in, let's say, from your parents and from your relatives, which I think most of the time is correct, it is this information overload which exists around the net, around the social media, which is leading to some wrong practices. So that is where I'll completely agree with you. And I think, like I was saying in my previous question, it is the big responsibility of science-led self-care companies, like Bayer, or like everybody else in this particular sector, to actually provide the right kind of information to the consumer. Only when you have the right kind of information, or which leads to the right kind of knowledge, will you be able to get people to practice responsible self-care. Otherwise, what will happen is that either you take wrong actions, so you don't act at all because you think it's nothing, or you overact, or you overreact, is essentially. So either of those two things can be a big challenge. So I would say that is the big responsibility of corporates like us. And I think we are trying to do a lot of that as well, in terms of providing the right information to the consumers and to the people in India. I think the challenge still remains about how does a consumer get to know what is out there is correct, and what is out there is what is, how to sort of sift through the whole miles and miles of data which sort of exists. And again, that is where awareness on causes comes into the picture. The simple awareness around eating the right kind of diet, or exercising doing the right kind of exercise for the every day, etc. So providing them with right information and telling them where to find that information is something that the corporates can do or need to do. It's not something that I'm doing as a favor. It's just my duty as a corporate. It is my duty to drive responsible self-care behavior and hence shift the self-care behavior to responsible self-care. That's the big drive that we will always be on. I think when it comes, the other point you were asking was what can the government do? I think the government has done a lot of good work around the area. I mean, we are all aware of the Pulse Polio campaign, for example, and the tremendous success of that campaign, where it almost eradicated polio in India. I think there is a lot of work which is done around nutrition in India as well, around the whole Poshan Abhiyan. So I think the government just needs to keep doing these awareness drives, etc. So just bring these big topics around nutrition, bring these topics around self-care, responsible self-care, practicing responsible self-care into the overall consumer domain as such, and work jointly with the corporate sector to get the right kind of an information, etc., which we are, through bodies like the OPPI and FICCI, etc., which we're working on. So I think the government can actually definitely do all of this and help us out. And I think the third responsibility, which I need to add, is on the people themselves, on all of us as such, to be more responsible in terms of, I think it's good to be proactive when it comes to taking care of your health, because it's like the starting point of self-care or the starting point of preventive health. But I think post that, taking the right direction or going into the right direction and seeking the right expertise, it's a bit like if you want to, invest your money, somewhere, you're not going to go on the internet and invest your money in whatever the internet tells you. You would ideally find somebody who's an expert in the field. So you would trust that guy with your money because you are seeking that information. For health also, you need to have the same kind of thought process that I need to go to the right kind of an expert and get the right kind of an information. That's the awareness, and that's the mindset that we need to drive amongst the Indian consumers.
So, Sandeep, you used two terms. One is responsible self-care, and you also spoke about how Bayer is talking about science-based self-care. So I have two questions. In fact, I'm going to club them so that you can answer it. You could deep dive into it. One is, what are your thoughts on responsible self-care backed by science, and what do you think that needs to happen to advance the science-based self-care in India? Now, also, when you're doing this, what is the impact of self-care habits that we can see on the impact and sustainability for an individual, for the healthcare system per se? Because I mean, there's a huge healthcare burden just because of ignorance around these things. And so, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I'll answer your second question first, which is the impact of self-care on the healthcare ecosystem as such. So, the overall healthcare ecosystem of any country, you can divide it into a primary healthcare, secondary healthcare, and tertiary healthcare, right? That's typically how you look at self-care. I think the way we look at self-care is that we believe that this is like an iceberg. Self-care is right at the base, essentially. So what self-care helps you in is to actually, ensure that your health ecosystem or your healthcare ecosystem has more legs for the right people, for the right patients, at the right time. All of us know that we have very few doctors, per thousand of people as such in India. And in such a scarce environment, it is even more critical for us to ensure that the doctor's time and his resources are spent on the right patient, or spent on the right things as such. That's number one. And the second way in which I think self-care impacts an overall country, and you and me as individuals, is that what we have seen is that globally, practicing self-care leads to a huge boost in the economy itself of the country. Yeah, because when you are practicing self-care, your productivity level goes up. Okay, I'll give you one fact over here. Indians are amongst the most hardworking people in the world. and I'm not stating this as a qualitative fact, it is actually a proven report which says that Indians work the most maximum number of hours in the world. And yet, the Indian workforce has the amongst the least number of productive years in their professional work life, even lower than countries like our South Asian neighbors, basically, like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So the number of productive years that we have in the system is actually amongst the least in the world. Now, why is that? That is precisely because we don't practice responsible self-care. We are people who will work through pain. Okay, we have a headache, we'll come to the work, we'll show up at work. We will not do anything about it. We'll not take medication and say, this will go away, or we'll take one tea and coffee. We'll keep working into pain. We have a mild fever, we'll still keep working. We will work on weekends. Okay, we will say that it's okay, I'll work on weekends. We will remove our family time. We'll take away from our family time. We'll take away from our body relaxation time, and we'll keep working harder. Now, all of that eventually takes a toll on our health, essentially, and that's why practice in self-care has a very direct impact on your productivity as a person, and hence consequently your country's economy as such. So that's how self-care impacts the healthcare system and also the economic prosperity of a country. And you and me, when we are trying to pursue our dreams, we believe that working hard is the only thing that we need to do, but we actually need to work a little bit smarter. I think that's my answer to your question number 2. Now, coming to science-led self-care, and I'll talk about what we are doing in the area of nutrition, which is currently the biggest topic, for us, and the biggest topic for India as well, or one of the most relevant topics for India. So, what we are doing is that we firstly figured out. So we are all aware that Indians have a lot of micronutrient deficiencies. Vitamins like vitamin D, or even many other vitamins. Most of us are deficient in all of those vitamins. What we did when we started a journey, and our division was formed only 2 years ago. When we started a journey, we actually did a study amongst the doctors in India, just to understand the extent of this and how do we get rid of this problem? How do we solve for this particular problem? And I think one of the understanding that at least I had as an individual was that if you eat a perfectly balanced diet with the right kind of products and all, with the right kind of food products and all, then you can, manage your micronutrient deficiency, etc. Everything comes to the picture. When we did this study amongst the doctors, which we did a couple of years ago, we were shocked to find that the doctors in India say that even if you eat the most balanced diet in India with the best nutrients, you will still fulfill only about 70% of your micronutrient needs. You will not recover the balance 30%. This is for a whole variety of reasons. The pollution, and the environmental changes which are happening in a country, etc., etc. So a starting point itself into this journey of nutrition and how do we communicate the importance of taking all the multivitamins or the vitamin, mineral, and supplements started with this understanding that this is what the doctors are saying, and that is what we were trying to.
So, Sandeep, since you work in that particular division, how big is the consumer vertical part of the business, which is categorized as non-prescription medicines that come under the OTC?
So, the overall consumer health industry in India is about 32 to 35,000 crores. X of the Ayurvedic products. So Ayurvedic products have a separate category. If you look at non-Ayurvedic OTC products, which have in India there are 5 categories. There is pain medication, analgesics. Then you have nutrition. Then you have dermatology or skin care, medicated skin care. Then you have the anti-allergy products, and then you have digestive health. These are the 5 categories which are there in India. We are currently present in 4 out of these categories. So other than digestive health, we are present in all of these 4 categories. So in pain management, we have Saradon as a lead brand. In nutrition, which I just spoke about, we have Supradin, which is a leading multivitamin brand. And then we have Caniston, which is a dermatology brand, and Alispan, which is an anti-allergy brand. In terms of the size of the division, I can't give you the exact number of the size of the division, but what I can tell you is that we currently reach about 5 crore households in India. When we started the journey, we were reaching about 3.5 to 4 crore households. We now reach about 5 crore households. And in the next 4 years, we're planning to take this number to 10 crore households. So in India, if you assume that we have about 35 crore households in India, overall household, we will be reaching about one third of those households in the next 4 years. We are currently reaching about 5 crore, and our journey right now is largely limited to urban India. We are just taking baby steps towards semi-urban and rural India right now. So that's where we stand.
And you've been in the industry for a while now. What are your observations and insights on the industry and the key dynamics that are working in this particular segment, which is going to define what the industry will look like in the next 4 years? That you're saying that you're going to reach, 10 crore households.
Yeah, so I think the entire industry, or the three pillars on which this industry rests. So uh, some let me just throw some numbers at you and some facts at you. So currently, India is amongst the most under-penetrated self-care markets in the world. So just on pain medication, which is the most penetrated category in India, we are still in single-digit penetrations. So there are less than 10% of Indian households that actually use, or Indian consumer that actually use a pain medication product as such. And similar is the story on nutrition. So we are a very nascent market. And the big challenge for this industry to grow, or the big driver for this industry to grow, is to actually grow the market itself. This is not a market about market share. This is not a market where you gain market share, or you talk about cutting from the same size of the pie, you take a bigger size of the pie. This is about making the pie itself a lot bigger. And that is where I think the question that you had asked me earlier, and what I was also stressing on earlier, that pie will only increase if we get more people to act on self-care, to become more proactive in their healthcare journeys. That will only happen if they have the right kind of awareness, and that awareness will only happen if they get the right kind of information. So it is literally those three things, information, awareness, leading to right kind of action, that will grow this entire space. A lot of growth has happened because of COVID, because information spread very fast. Yeah, and that led to a lot of awareness very fast, and that led to action. A lot of work is currently being done by the government of India around the Poshan Abhiyan, around the nutrition Abhiyan, which is all about getting people to eat the right kind of food, etc. So a lot of awareness is being generated over there. We believe that a lot more work still needs to be done over there. So that will drive the whole system forward, and get more people to get into the whole self-care routine. And you know that less than 10% of Indians have healthcare insurance in India. Very few people have healthcare insurance. So every single rupee that you spend on the medicine, on any medicine for anything in India, literally goes out of your own pocket. And that is what we are trying to communicate to the consumers, that you act before you have to spend from your own pocket on any big ailment. So whether it is pain, whether it is a headache, we are educating the consumers to act on that headache. We are telling the consumers that real bravery does not lie in bearing the headache and working through it and saying, I'm a strong guy because I'm working through pain. Real bravery is actually about winning over that pain, is about killing that pain and working more productively. Similarly, getting the right information about minerals and supplements, and using them to completely fulfill your diet, is the right direction for you to take. When you have an antifungal infection, instead of putting some talcum powder on it, etc., using the right antifungal medication or the antifungal cream to get rid of the problem from the roots is what you need to do. You need to understand whether you have a common cold. All of us feel that when we have a runny nose, that, oh, I just have a common cold. Now you may not have a common cold. It may be an allergy. So you need to check it out and take the anti-allergy medication. Check it out with the GP. Go to a GP and figure out what is wrong, and then take the right kind of medication. So right information leading to right awareness, leading to right action across these four categories is what we are driving towards, and that's how we believe this market can grow a lot further. Even just to give you a perspective, even with these low rates of penetration in India, we are the seventh largest country in the world in OTC products, seventh largest. If we continue to grow at this pace, at the double-digit rate of growth, we will become amongst the top three countries in the world in the next 5 years. But we will still be at about 18-20% penetration. So you can imagine the kind of scope which this industry has, in terms of its growth and in terms of how big it can become.
No, absolutely. I kind of resonate with what you just said that, we need to take care of ourselves. But the thing is that, also we need to be careful as to, whatever may be happening to you, whether it's a headache or it's a skin allergy or whatever, we need to find out as to what is the reason why it is happening, because what could be happening is just a symptom of something bigger that could be there. So, that is where the science-based observations need to come and play a role, and people need to be educated. Now, let's talk about trends. We saw pandemic really created a trend for self-care. People were bothered and concerned about building their immunity. They were concerned about remaining healthy so that the other things did not affect you. But like you just mentioned when we started this conversation today, that people have slowly started to forget. So that's a new trend of forgetting what you learned, and that is there. So what are the newest trends that we are seeing today, which will define the future?
I think if you ask me, the single biggest trend, or the well, it's not new in the sense that it's been there for about 3-4 years since COVID, is the whole advent of AI in the world of preventive medicine, yeah, in the world of preventive health, I should say, as such. So what we are obviously seeing is, I mean, all of us wear trackers, and these trackers have the ability to tell you everything about yourself, as long as you want to take a look into it. If you are just using them as a fashion accessory, then it's not a then it won't do anything for you. But we see a big trend on these trackers, of people wearing these trackers and using them as reminders, or using them to remind them to do the right things, as such. So I see that trend growing a lot more. So in India, it's the penetration rates, our levels are still on the lower side. But this is one big trend which I see. And again, on the topic of AI itself, we see, the whole area of precision health using AI, because AI now has so much information about you. It can literally make your entire self-care routine for you for the week and give it to you. It can also make your nutrition chart for you and give it to you, essentially, because it knows everything about you. It has all the information about you. So this whole angle of precision health or precision self-care, regime is something that AI can really give you. I think most of the people who are using these trackers are not even aware of it as yet. But I see that growing as well, and I see AI becoming a very, very useful assistant, and a very much more knowledgeable assistant than Google, for example, or social media, for example, because it is talking to you, it is talking about you, and it is using your own information to give you the right kind of products, or the right kind of information. So I see this as the single biggest trend which can really change the whole self-care, and not just self-care, but the healthcare game in India. So that I see, if you had to ask me one big trend, this would be the one. I think the second one which we have utilized, and this now comes in from a desire to touch the rural consumers in India, or the semi-urban consumers in India. One of the challenges that we were facing was that our products and our awareness was limited to the urban markets. And we said, look, it's not possible for us to talk about doing a self-care revolution in India and not do something for and not go to the semi-urban and to the rural consumers as such. Now, even if we are able to put our products over there, if there is no awareness, then again the products will not sell, or and people will not practice the right. So one of the things that we have used is the mobile phone, and I think this is a trend which is probably it's unique to India. The mobile phone penetration in rural India is almost as high as it is in urban India. So we have used the mobile phone penetration to do a lot of voice-based, again, this is AI again, voice-based to drive voice-based AI tools, generated them. We've done an initiative on Saradon where basically, it's a voice-based AI tool which we have given to the consumers, where you can dial in a number, and then using that number, you can literally create your own pain medication or your own self-care pain routine, so that you don't get any headaches as such. So that tool is not about selling the pill, it is about managing your pain. So it has information. So what we did, and again this is slightly more detailed, we figured out what were the causes. You were asking this question to me earlier. We figured out what are the biggest causes of head pain in India, of headache in India. And not surprisingly, the biggest cause of headache in India is stress. So we decided to delve deeper and we said, okay, what is the cause for stress in India? Two big causes for stress in India. One, financial pressure, financial stress, financial issues. And second, workplace pressure. These came up as the two biggest causes of stress in India. And surprisingly, they were similar for men and women as such. So one of the things that we've included in this voice-based AI tool that I'm talking to you about is something like financial tips. So simple tools which can help you how to save more money, or simple tools which tell you what is a mutual fund, for example. So very, very basic stuff which takes care of your stress. The idea here is not to sell them the pill. The idea here is to tell them that you can take care of the stress which is giving you the headache as such, and don't get confused by various things. So I think mobile phone penetration, using the mobile phone as a medium of taking AI and using AI as a medium of giving the right information, we've used that, and we believe that this trend is also going to increase and help us to reach out to more and more rural consumers in India. So I'm actually most passionate and most hopeful about this particular trend, because I think what I feel, and because I worked in brands which had a very large rural footprint earlier, one of the biggest challenges was always how do you reach the rural consumer. I think this is the single biggest key. Mobile penetration, high mobile penetration is the single biggest key which can help us unlock the rural consumers for us.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that. That voice, because that an IVR platform typically helps you overcome the language barrier as well.
Yes.
And you are able to understand better, not when it is in your language and when it is spoken to you, than when you have to read something. So that's a brilliant initiative. Now, also, Sandeep, what are some of the initiatives that buyer is bringing to the table that differentiates them from everyone else in the same segment?
So one of the we are, as you know, we are an MNC. We are a global company which is known for its science-based products, science-backed and science-based products. So that is our single biggest edge in this country. When we started, we said that this will be our single biggest driver, or the biggest edge that we have in this company. What we have added over a period of time is that we've also said that we need to marry the science with the local knowledge. And I'll again give you an insight over there. We have this brand called Supradin, multivitamin brand called Supradin, which is the world's largest multivitamin brand as such. We have it in India as well. The Indian formulation that you have is different from the global formulation. It is suited to the Indian consumer. It's made for the Indian consumers. And then over a period of time, we learned that Indian consumers want natural ingredients, or that natural ingredients can play a big role in driving this awareness to action gap, in fulfilling this awareness to action gap. So we've actually innovated locally, and we've just launched a variant on Supradin which has Indian natural ingredients like tulsi, haldi, ashoka, shatavari. Now this has happened for the first time in the history of Bayer Consumer Health, that we launch products with known Indian natural ingredients. So that is what we've just done. We will continue to drive on this journey and keep on marrying the global science, best science practices that we have with the local Indian consumer insights, and put something which is the best for the Indian consumer. So, and the other thing that we are very proud of saying is that we are 100% made in India. We don't have a single product which is imported. And going forward also, we believe in innovating for India and making it in India. as being the key drivers of the innovation process. So I think those are the some of the things which can differentiate us for the rest, that we have the backing of the best science available in the world, and we also have the knowledge of the local insights and the local players as such who work with us. We have the products which are made in India for us. We work through 5 contract manufacturing partners who are also innovation partners. We have local, R&D partners who help us in doing this R&D. We have one center in Bangalore and one in Mumbai. So a lot of both R&D help and a lot of marketing insights help that we drive from India, and married with the whole, like I said, the whole science-based ecosystem that we have is what is driving us forward and what is differentiating us from the rest of the world, I would say.
And Sandeep, my last question to you is something that I'm very, very keen to ask you, is that are there any challenges that you're finding in the healthcare space related to spurious products? And, some of the products that may be available in the market which are not genuinely manufactured by you or sold by you. Is this a challenge that we are facing? And if you are facing this challenge, what is it that you are doing about it?
So see, spurious products is a challenge that I think the entire consumer good industry or the entire FMCG and OTC industry faces. We are not facing any more or any lesser than what everybody else is facing. I think besides the spurious products, I think what I would say the bigger challenge is in finding products which are similar to our products, or that use the benefit of the brand equity which you have, and yet they are essentially meant to fool the consumer into thinking that this is what you're buying. So, for example, we've seen a brand. We have seen a brand called Saribon selling in rural parts of the world. Exactly the same packaging. The D is changed to a B, and that is selling in the rural parts of India. Similarly, we've seen many such variations of Supradin selling in the market. So those are some of the bigger challenges, I would say. What we do typically is that we obviously have a sales team which is the closest into the market. We always keep our eyes and ears open on these things. We also have our industry partners, people who are our competitors. So we also have a hotline with them. If we see something which we feel is spurious or looks different from what they're selling, we inform them through OPPI, through our organization of the industry. If they see anything like that, they also inform that. So I think that is where we sort of bring down our competitive barriers and we work as a single industry, because it just harms all of us. So that's how we are essentially tackling it. So essentially using our entire field force to keep our eyes and ears open, using also our partners in the industry to keep their eyes and ears open, and also us. So all of us are sort of watching out for everybody else, because this is such a huge problem. Honestly speaking, this whole spurious as well as similar sounding brand names, these are both huge problems, and they especially impact the brands which have higher brand equity, because you are essentially fooling the consumers for that into thinking that these are the same brand, but they are not. So that's how we are trying to get rid of this problem, and we are extremely strict when we find we have absolutely a very strict policy on these, and we take the strictest possible action whenever we found. And we found instances, especially on Saradon, we found many instances actually of spurious products or similar sounding products, and we've always acted very fast on them.
Well, that's amazing to know. Because one of the challenges that we have seen in the past is the handwriting of the doctor when he's writing a prescription. So similar sounding brands could itself be misleading.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
absolutely.
the patient does not even know that he's buying something which is not what the doctor prescribed.
Exactly. And in the smaller towns, and some of the chemists, I won't say a major, but some of the people also, because you get huge trade discounts on these kind of products, so you would end up pushing those kind of products. Some of those practices are also there, and especially in the smaller towns. So otherwise, I think the other thing that we do is we also keep interacting with the chemist partners to let us know, okay, he knocked down if the product is genuine and it still sounds the same, the chemist will be bound to keep it. So but he at least keeps us informed that, look, this is what has come into the market. So that's the other thing where we're using the chemist partners also to help us around on these, because their business gets impacted as well. And this is exactly how it happens, what you were just saying, which is that the doctor's prescription nobody can read other than the chemist, and the patient thinks that it's the right product. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sandeep, this conversation has been really nice because I'm also personally very passionate about the patient outcomes and patient protection, and what you're talking of is actually leading to a better outcome, ensuring preventive healthcare. And I feel that I resonate when you say that uh, uh, you know it reduces not just the healthcare burden on the country, but also increases productivity and helps you building a better economy. And the what really stuck with me when you were talking about the iceberg example, and the bottom of the pyramid is the self care, and that just very clearly brings out the importance of self care, and that is what leads to preventive healthcare in our country. So thank you so much for sharing these insights. I'm sure this is going to be useful to everyone. And thank you for taking our time to be with the PW Healthcare World.
Thank you so much, Harbinder. Thanks for having me here, and love talking to you. Thank you so much.